Okay, we're going to start. Good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, June 16th, 2026, and I will call the Committee of the Whole to order.
Drangler, Jacobs,
Present.
Owens,
Here.
Rosas,
Present.
Baker,
Present.
Batterman,
Present.
Comstock,
Here.
Crombie.
It could be present or dash here.
What did she say?
We have quorum.
Thank you. All right, next item, approval of the minutes from June 2nd, 2026, Committee of the Whole meeting. Do I have
I'll
a
move
motion?
to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, changes, deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right. Next, citizen appearances, public comment. We have Jewel Kavanaugh from 1500 St. Albert's the Great Way, and representing yourself.
Miss Jewel.
Thank you. I'm Jewel Kavanaugh, and I am here to formally ask the council to revisit the city's organizational chart. In November of 2025, when the chart was approved, it was during a time of chaos. You were in a heated budget debate. We had several department heads leave very suddenly, and we had several alders with very little experience in the budgeting process. You were not provided complete information during that organizational chart discussion. You were told it would save the city $600,000, but you were not told that it would likely result in permanent pay increases for upper administration. On June 2nd of 2026, you approved positions that required pay raises. It was slipped in a slide, one of the slides you had in your presentation, but you were not told directly that this is going to result in a domino effect for everybody above the communications director. You also approved the hire of a new assistant administrator. You did not approve, nor were you told, that they were going to recruit somebody with 10 plus years of experience. You were not told that this amount of required experience will likely ensure this position is hired at the tippity top of the pay range. You were also not told that this position being hired at a higher rate will likely result in raises for the people above. Your administration knew this, or they should have known. It's HR 101. Whomever was responsible for omitting or downplaying this information should have a consequence. It should be in their performance evaluation, and they should be given job instruction. That being said, we always said we were going to come back to the organizational chart. People didn't agree with it at the time. So tonight, I'm asking you please to revisit it. And second, I'm asking you to reduce your priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, council liaison committee members' reports. Do we have any? None? All right.
I'm sorry. I'll wake up here. As the liaison to the Colonial Club, I would just like to encourage people to go to Strawberry Fest this weekend on Saturday.
Thank you. All right, there's no unfinished business, new business. Consideration, discussion, and possible action on authorizing staff to apply for the Safer Grant Program to provide funding for 3 additional full-time personnel. Staff recommends the Committee of the Whole move to authorize the Fire Division to apply for the federal staffing for adequate fire and emergency response grant. The fiscal impact, if the Safer Grant is approved and Council approves funding for 1 full-time firefighter, that funding will serve as a local cost share. The Safer Grant provides federal funding for 75% of both salary and fringe benefits during the first 2 years and 35% during the 3rd year. And Chief Garrison is here. But first we have a JAT form from Teresa McElroy, 178 North Street. I am in favor of Chief Garrison's request to apply for the SAFER grant. If the city is awarded this grant, the fire department will have the manpower needed as outlined in Executive Staff's Plan B. Chief Garrison will explain his Plan B. And next we have Jewel Kavanaugh, who would like to speak on the topic.
Hello, Jewel Kavanaugh. I'm speaking tonight in favor of the application for the SAFER grant, which would support pay and benefits for 3 additional firefighters. I applaud the fire department for their creative problem solving and applying for this grant. These positions are an essential service. Evidence-based fire prevention prioritizes early detection, and educational campaigns significantly reduce fire-related fatalities, injuries, and property damages. These types of effort have been studied, and they've shown to reduce fire-related deaths by up to 80% and property damage by 70%. This is an estimated return of $7 in savings for every dollar spent. So I am requesting tonight that we allow the fire department to apply for this grant, and we give them all of the support that they need for their necessary positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jewel. Chief Garrison, would you like to make a statement?
I'm happy to answer any questions, but this is our second go-around in trying to get the SAFER grant, and we used the SAFER grant in 2018 to staff our Station 2. My job right now, the referendum failed, is look for revenue. That's what I'm doing. I'm working on another additional 5 grants besides this as we move forward. So I'm out there looking for the monies to make these positions happen and make this thing work.
Thank you. So I have a question for you. Given if this gets approved, how do you see the future of the fire department?
I'm sorry, a little, again?
Given if this gets approved, then how do you see the future of the fire department?
Well, we have an amazing part-time crew, as you know, covering 45% of our shifts. We need to start cutting in that. I'm used to having about 60 paid on call. We're down to about 48 right now. So as that number keeps on reducing, we have to start looking at staffing our full time. And I truly believe that we could continue to use this fantastic staffing model that saves the city dollars. Year after year, we could continue to use the paid on call staffing model to move forward. And we need to incrementally continue to build the fire department. Currently, we have enough staffing full time, probably only to staff 1 station. We don't even have enough to staff 2 stations, but we're just so fortunate with the people we have. But everybody here in this room understands the generational shift that's going on. There is a huge lack of people who want to get into public safety. People don't want our jobs. They don't want to work weekends. They don't want to work nights. They want to spend time with their families and have a life. And in the direction that we're going, if we don't stop kicking the can down the road, I've said this numerous times and I've been saying it for 11 years, we need to build this organization incrementally to get it where it needs to be. I think the paid on call structure will last another 5, maybe 10 years, but I anticipate a big downfall in the fire service in Dane County, not only in Dane County, in the country in the next 10 years, because it's not going to get any better. And we cannot continue to put a Band-Aid on this situation. We need to get it going through. And people who have been on this council for 10, 11 years has heard this from me every year. And we're getting to a point that, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little scared of the future. And I need to stand up here and advocate for this, and whatever I can do to get more dollars, I will. And if we get 3 people, 2 of them will go to shift and 1 will go into the Bureau. And as Jewel mentioned earlier, fire prevention is the best thing that we can do to keep our residents safe. And If grant's what we have to do, grant, but as I said, we got one in 2018. I hope we can get another one right now.
Alder Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, we spoke about this prior to this. I believe you called it bots, applying for grants, 3-year type of limitation, then the city takes over that. Have you attempted to apply for that as well for the fire department?
This is the same grant. This is what we talked about.
The same grant?
What I'm doing, this is the exact same grant that you and I spoke about.
And only one position, though?
No, well, we are in the budget, the current budget that executive staff has brought to you
sorry.
folks. There's one position in that budget. In the SAFER, we have 3.
Oh, my apologies. Okay.
That's okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alder Comstock.
I'm not sure that this question is for you, but I'll ask it anyway. We have 2 years where 25% of those positions wouldn't be covered, and then 1 year where 65% wouldn't be covered, if I added correctly. Is that right? I guess then I'll go this way. Ultimately, that decision, I think, comes back to this council, but where are the funds going to come from? We're in a situation where we have to look for answers to questions before we make decisions. And I'll be the first to say that there isn't anything more important that we can do than support the fire chief with his request. But how are we going to support his request? And that would be very helpful to know.
Sure. So what the chief is doing is, as you mentioned, a grant process where it's staggered, and he's using the full-time fire position that we have put in our proposal for reduction. So that would need to happen for this to work. The other is grants sound nice, but at the end of the day, we do have to fund these positions. And so, as we said during the referendum process, we're going to need to go out to referendum again. There's no avoiding that. We will have to do that. That is one way to fund these positions at the end of the grant period. Mm-hmm. Another is doing something with the wheel tax. Another could be making reductions elsewhere, but they'd have to be substantial. Another option would be increasing ambulance fees to try to cover those costs. So we do have options. I guess a final option is, and some municipalities do it, is you lay off the firefighters at the end of the grant process if we cannot afford to sustain them. So we do have options, but one of the things we have to think about with grants is at some point the grant runs out and you do have to fund this expense, and that expense grows over time. Salaries go up, health insurance costs go up, and so you're right to be thinking about that. Alder Comstock, is that 3 years sounds like a long time away, but it goes quick, and then you have to come up with answers as to how do you continue to fund these positions, because no one wants to lay off public safety personnel. And so
you're right about it would become a pretty good sized burden on the city after 3 years. But what about the percentages that aren't covered by the grant prior to that time? Do you have a plan in place for that?
We do. So the Plan B, or the reductions, includes the funding of one firefighter. So instead of funding that one firefighter, we would, like hiring that position, we would use those dollars to cover our local share. And then at the end of the 3-year period, that 4th year, 100% of those 3 firefighters that are currently being funded in part by SAFER need to be fully funded by the city. So it's that 4th year that you need to be concerned about, or if the Plan B, the reductions don't work out and we're not able to fund the firefighter, then you don't have the local share either.
Okay, so you're not overly concerned about the first 3 years?
I'm not assuming that the city council is willing to make the reductions to balance the budget and to be able to provide for the additional staffing that does not exist today. If we don't do that, we don't have the local share. So that's the first hurdle. And then obviously in year 4, we have to have a solution to funding these 3 positions, which means we need to take advantage of a couple of the, some of these options, one of these options that I've presented.
Okay, thank you.
The way I was looking at it is if we get approved that one position actually would be a standing position
Yes, that
for the
position
rest
would
of the
continue.
time. So yes, you would get to, if you got to the end of this contract with FEMA, we would have to, and we didn't have the finances, we would have to lay 2 people off.
Okay.
But it's a risk, but I think it's a good risk.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Benron?
So these other grants that you're in the process of writing, would they cover any of these expenses?
No, they're all equipment grants. So they're the other grants that I'm looking at would cut into the future of CIP money.
Okay. And these type of grants for personnel and salary and benefits, that's kind of rare, right? Normally.
No, it happens every year. There's about $350 million that is distributed nationwide for 3 years, for every year. The issue with they come up really quick and you have to get them through, our city elders. But the big issue is there might be $350 million. There's 3 million fire departments applying for those monies. But after doing the last grant, I could see why a lot of people would say, I'm not doing this anymore, because it took me 7 hours just to finish one.
Well, and I say that only because being a nonprofit director in my past life, the grants that we applied for would never allow us to request staffing support. So we're very fortunate in this case.
Yes, and we were very fortunate to get it in 2018 because it opened up our whole second station, and we all know how busy that area is now.
Alder Baker?
Chief, first of all, I want to say thank you for your added effort of going after those grants. I mean, we've all it's been a difficult time now post referendum, as I'll call it, and making that transition to find money. And so I applaud what you're doing, and thank you so much for your efforts in there. I like this grant idea, and if there's no other questions, I'd like to make the motion to advance this.
Second.
Did you have your hand up, Alder Dringler? Oh, okay. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah. I guess I'll share the comment I was going to say. I was just going to say that this is non-negotiable. This is something that we have to have. This really should come before all other priorities. So I fully support this. If in 2 or 3 years down the road we need to make other cuts so we can keep our fire safety people, that's something that we would have to do. So that we could potentially have a grant help pay for this. So I fully support this.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Call the roll, please.
Drengler,
Aye.
Jacobs,
Aye.
Owens,
Aye.
Rosas,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Batterman,
Aye.
Comstock,
Aye.
Crombie,
Aye.
and that passes 8-0.
Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is the Sun Prairie Public Library Expansion and Renovation Progress Report and the Summer Reading Program Update. Presentation, and invite Director Hetzler to join us.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my slides up here properly. So give me one moment.
Since this is big finale, we'll forego the 8-slide rule.
Okay, there we go. Thanks, everybody. Good evening. I'm here today or tonight to present the library project's expansion and renovation program, as well as the summer reading program. So the first slide that you see is something that is probably pretty familiar. It is our site plan and our floor plan. This was something that you saw over 2 years ago, when before we even broke ground, and I'm glad to say that all of this is still what we used for the plan, and nothing changed with these plans. And I'm also very delighted to say that the project is complete. We completed the addition that took about a year. Starting June 2024 until June 2025, we immediately went into our renovation phases. We had about three plus renovation phases, and that began immediately after the addition was complete until this spring, March. And then we went right into our parking lot project, and that was completed on June 1st. And we're currently just closing out the project with punch list items. And just quickly, our financial tracking, this was the cost of the project, construction costs, soft costs, the total approved budget, and where we sit today with the project balance. We did receive some incentives from Focus on Energy and WPPI, and those are being used to offset the debt that the city has incurred. So happy to say that those checks have been coming in, and those should total about $78,000. And the next few slides, and most of the slides, are just photos of the library. So I know many of you have been into the library, but those of you that haven't been to the library lately, I hope that you'll enjoy seeing some of these photos. So the first photo that you see is actually the last photo that I took, and this is of our parking lot. So very pleased with the completion of the parking lot. And the slides kind of go in progression as you walk through the library. So if you were to walk in through the atrium entrance, this is what you would see as you walk in. It's the atrium space that we use for on everyday basis for people to work and use the space as an extra space that's there for our patrons even before they enter into the main part of the library. But it also serves for gatherings for large programs like our Repair Cafe programs or large author visits. And it will also serve for our community resiliency as we get that going. Next to, in the lobby, next to the community room, you'll see our donor wall and also our dedication plaque recognizing the contributions of the library board, library foundation, Friends of the Library, and our elected officials. And then this is the community room. So the community room facing the front, you'll see that there's some art on the wall. We have some art rails for art exhibits. And then this is also the view if you're facing the atrium, and that door does slide open to allow for overflow. And then this is the Friends of the Library bookstore, and this was on their opening day, the ribbon cutting that they had in April. And from what I understand, they are doing very well and staying quite busy. And as you walk into the library, you will be welcomed by staff at the welcome desk. At the welcome desk, you will receive a multitude of services, including establishing library card accounts, working with the catalog to find materials, getting reference assistance, readers advisory, helping with checkouts and check-ins, inter and outer library loans, assistance with technology, helping people get signed up and registered for programs, general library visits, and study room reservations. And a new program that we've begun is a volunteer program. We have a greeter and guide volunteer program that's in the lobby just outside of the Read Before bookstore. And the volunteers at that bookstore help with some general navigation and also help guide our patrons and visitors to staff at the welcome desk. And this is just some more photos of the library. This is our technology stations in the adult area. A couple of our smaller study rooms. And these really help our patrons that are working remotely from home or doing some teleconferencing for interviews or their work or even medical appointments. And then some other reading and working spaces that aren't in a private room, but more in open areas, but still quiet areas. We have the Rank Reading Room and one of our reading towers and working towers. And then, of course, more space for our collection. So on the left is just a sign of our Library of Things collection. And it's exactly what it is. It's a library of things. So not your traditional materials, but things that people can check out, like tools, sporting equipment, and experiences passes, things like going to the Milwaukee Zoo, for example. Very popular over the summer in particular. And then more space for our collection, including displays, something that we were lacking previously. And then we'll move into our youth and teen services area. So this is one of our spaces within our teen area. And it's just much better lighting and, of course, just a dedicated space for this very important age group. And then I can't do this presentation justice without showing everyone the aquarium. And it is very popular, not just with kids and families, but many adults come to look at the fish. And then this is our early literacy area. So the youth area does progress from materials for our youngest patrons and progressively goes to older patrons. And this is our early literacy station with the board books in front of the play structure. And then just to the back of that is our youth program room where programs such as story times occur. Also to support this, our patrons in this age group, we have a caregiver's room where a caregiver can change their child's diaper, feed them. We also have a sensory room to help our patrons regulate their nervous systems. The sensory respite room is in the youth area, but it can be used by all ages and age groups. And then we have things behind the scenes, of course. We have our staff workspaces. This is our page table, and this is where work by various departments occurs: technical services, our pages, circulation, technology, and administration. Cataloging of materials happens here, mending and processing, reshelving, of course. Materials get sorted through the automated sorter and by hand here. Deliveries come through here through the South Central Library system, and we have our drive-up service and book drop occur in these back spaces. And then, of course, we have new event spaces. We have the Mixer. Many of you have heard of this space. This is the library's maker space, and it's a space for hands-on learning. And then we have our Kind Stage and Amphitheater, and this is our space for outdoor programming, things like musical performances, theater, and then sustainable features. you have heard a lot about this as well. Our microgrid and battery energy storage system, our geothermal HVAC, solar PV. And then on May 29th, we had our ribbon cutting. You might see yourselves in that photo. So that was a really wonderful day. It was great to have so many community members celebrate the morning with us. And this is inside in the atrium. So this is an example of how the space can be used for these large gatherings. And of course, our summer reading program. So all of this work that we did for these spaces was really so that we can provide all of the services that we hope to provide as we evolve into more modern public library services. And we are kicking off this summer with our summer reading program. The theme is Unearth the Story. It's the same theme for kids and adults. And as of 4 p.m. today, we had over 2,300 patrons from all age groups register for the program. So it's going really strong. This summer, we're really looking forward to offering more events in the Mixer, our makerspace, and on the right you see the ribbon cutting for the Mixer. So it was a really great day to open that space up. And we used the space just a couple of, this was one was on June 7th, where we had an open house so people could come in and try all different types of things. And on the right, you see some face painting going on, and that was just this past Saturday. And then the same thing with the Kind Stage and Amphitheater. We're really looking forward to providing lots of programming opportunities in this space. And this Saturday, we had a double feature with a band called Cuckoo. They're from the Twin Cities, and they are a family-friendly duo, and they were in our atrium this weekend at 11 and 2 o'clock, and this is a view from the roof, actually, of the atrium space, and it was great to have so many people attend and enjoy themselves during the weekend at the library. And that is it. I just wanted to thank everybody for their support during this long process, and for giving me and Kevin Johnson, who is our owner's rep and is on the line with us today virtually, an opportunity multiple times over the past 2 years to share how the project's been going and give you these updates. So I'm really happy to share that the project is complete. So happy to take any questions too. And Kevin's here if you have any questions on details or engineering or that kind of thing.
Kevin, did you want to say anything in addition to what Swetha has shared?
Mr. Council President, Swetha covered everything in extraordinarily great detail. Again, it's been a true pleasure to serve with the library board as well as city administration and this council. So again, thank you for a successful project, and again, happy to answer any questions.
Alder Benjamin?
I'm curious how you're handling the maker space now that the referendum did not pass, and so we don't have a part-time staff member there. How are you handling that?
Yeah, we do not have dedicated staff. So my staff that typically, plan programs, they are working together to bring programs in there. It's just that without the dedicated position, we obviously can't keep it open all the hours that we had intended to. But we are offering workshops and have our schedules out. Over the next couple of months, we're going to be dedicating our time to developing some procedures there and start a recruitment effort for volunteers to kind of help do that, because we do have volunteers in the community with STEM backgrounds that are very interested in providing their volunteer services in that space.
Any other questions? Alder Crombie.
Thank you. I just want to thank you. I mean, to me, this is such a sustainable building, and it's going to last for, I mean, people are going to be able to engage. You know, it's going to be kind of like a hub of the community, you know, so people can, with their well-being, and, you know, there's just so many different programs, and, you know, it's not just about books, you know, it's about the programs that you have. And I drove by, I didn't get a chance. I really wanted to go to the concert on Saturday.
Yeah.
There was like over 1,000 people there. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But I just want to thank you. And I just have one question for you.
Yes.
And you may not, well, you could be aware of this. I wouldn't be surprised, but the sidewalk in the entrance.
Yes.
It's kind of, is that going to be repaired?
Yeah, I think that's something that Public Works looked at, because I think that was done as part of the streets project last year.
That's what
So yeah, I think that yes, we are all aware of that one. Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that drives me nuts when I go by there, or when I go in the entrance.
Yeah.
But, okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, we're working with our contractors on that. Unless, Kevin, you have any breaking news that I don't know about.
No, we have a meeting with the contractors on Thursday, and that is on our agenda.
Thank you.
Alder Baker.
I wanted to say thank you, because last week we hosted the Wisconsin Community Media Group from all over the state, and they really enjoyed the library. Thank you for letting us in early and going through that.
Sure.
Appreciate it. I know Cousin Subs has to figure out how to get food from their car to the boardroom, but that's not the library. Here's what I want you to know is that during the break and then afterwards, members were roaming the library and just talking about how beautiful it was and how surprised at how many people were in there and utilizing the services. So thank you for helping us make a show off Sun Prairie a little bit.
Yeah, we're excited for a very busy summer, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Thank you, Swetha.
Thank you.
Thank you for 7 years of work on this.
Thanks, appreciate it.
All right. The next item is presentation on roles and responsibilities of local government leadership. And this is a presentation by Attorney McDaniel.
Thank you, President Owens. Give me just a second while I get my screen shared again. I didn't want to start until Shweta disconnected because I didn't want to interrupt her presentation, and I apologize, I don't have as many pictures. Okay, so this is kind of a continuation of the council education and leadership that was requested by Alder Baker in his referral. So as time permits, we'll be putting these on COW agendas. And if there's a specific topic that any of you would like to see addressed, please let me know and we'll try to incorporate that in with the consent of Council President Owens. So I kind of wanted to start by talking about options for the organization of municipal government in Wisconsin. There's 3 different forms of government that you can have as a Wisconsin city. That's a council manager form of government under Chapter 64. There's also a commission form of government under Chapter 64, or the mayor and council form of government under Chapter 62, which is what we're organized under. I have a chart here. It is an old chart. There is not an updated version that I am aware of that kind of shows what cities and villages are using what form of government. So as you can see, there's kind of a varied approach. 66% of Wisconsin cities as of 2016 did have a mayor council administrator form of government. And then the next highest category would be a mayor and council without an administrator at about 23%. Those vary between a strong mayor and council where the mayor has a lot of power and a weak mayor and council where the council essentially sets all of the direction and the mayor ensures that that's carried forth. And then there's also a council manager form of government. You will note that the commission's not listed there because no one in Wisconsin has a commission form of government at this time. So under the council manager form of government, it's organized under Chapter 64 of the Wisconsin statutes, and the manager has very explicit duties. The city manager would serve as the CEO of the city. They are responsible for appointing and supervising all department heads, as well as preparing monthly reports and accounts to council. The council president does not have any veto authority. There's a very specific statutory procedure to terminate a manager. Cities that operate under a council manager form of government do not have a mayor. So they're a little bit unique from the model that we're used to here in Sun Prairie, because they will have a city council president who will kind of be the de facto leader of the legislative group. And then the manager is vested with the majority of the rest of the power. So there is no mayor in those communities at all. It's the council and the manager. There's about 10 cities in Wisconsin who use this form. There's also the commission form of government. That's a mayor and 2 council members. Those are full-time positions. They all have a 6-year term. And again, this is not currently in use by any city in Wisconsin, but it is a form of government that is theoretically available should anyone be interested. Then there's the mayor council form, which is what we're likely the most familiar with because that's what we utilize. In this form, the duties of the mayor are set by state statute, as are the duties of the council. So the mayor serves as the CEO of the city, ensures that all ordinances and laws are enforced, ensures employees discharge their duties, and has veto power to acts of the common council. The council is responsible for setting policies, approving the levy of the budget, and enacting laws. And then under this form of government, councils can choose to establish a city administrator position to serve as the chief administrative officer of the city. So what are the main differences between these? In a city without an administrator, the mayor still exercises all of their authority under 6209 Parent 8. So they will directly supervise daily operations. All department heads would report to the mayor, subject to like the police and fire and utility and library limitations, as well as receive assignments from the mayor. And the mayor ensures that council's policy decisions and directives are carried out. In cities with an administrator, the mayor still exercises their authority, but they have more of an indirect executive responsibility, and they're responsible for monitoring the activities of the administrator and department heads. But the administrator, who reports to mayor and council, is responsible for directly supervising the daily operations of the city and supervision of staff. Again, I know that there's some caveats to that. Obviously, police and fire are kind of independent officers to be free of political influence, so they're appointed by the Police and Fire Commission. And as we've discussed, the library is kind of a unique beast under Chapter 43. So when you have the form that we've elected to have in Sun Prairie with a council, mayor, administrator, these are kind of what the regular duties of the mayor are, because I think often the question is, well, why do we need a mayor and administrator? Like, what is the difference? What do these do? Why do we need both? So under this, the mayor serves as the CEO of the city. They preside over council meetings, monitor the activities of the administrator to ensure that they're faithfully discharging their duties, sees that ordinances and laws are enforced, serves as the policy leader for the community. So council sets policy, but oftentimes that policy is presented by the mayor, either through the mayor's executive budget or through initiatives of the mayor. The mayor has the ability to break ties at council, has veto power over the acts of the council, serves as the city's chief media representative to the extent that there's public comment needed on something, and then also receive comments and complaints and works with administrator to resolve those issues. So I went and looked at our peer communities, and what I did was I gathered the 40 largest cities in Wisconsin. Depending on what survey you look at and what day we're counting the residents, we're around 19 or 20 for Wisconsin cities in terms of size and population. So these are kind of the forms of government. As you can see, they're pretty evenly spread out amongst our peer communities. There's a handful that have a manager. Again, there's only 10 who have a manager, and most of those are our peer communities. These are our peer communities who have the council, mayor, administrator form of government. I do have asterisks by those. With 1 star, those are villages and not cities. I did note that because there are a number of very large Wisconsin villages. For example, Menominee Falls is always one of our closest comparables in terms of population. They are a village, not a city. And then council mayor, you can see that kind of varies from Milwaukee is the state's largest city down to Franklin is one of the smaller ones. The communities that have 2 asterisks over on the council mayor side are communities that don't have a city administrator, but they do have either like an administrative services coordinator or a director of administrative services. I think one of them calls it like their administrative like leadership or something like that. So they don't have a full-blown city administrator, but they do have a designated full-time staff member who is sort of responsible for taking on or coordinating the wishes of council. I want to talk more about the roles of leadership too, because I think there's often a lot of confusion, not so much amongst all of us necessarily, but in the public about who is responsible for doing what in the government. So under our Sun Prairie structure as set forth under state law as well as our ordinances, you as council are the legislative branch. So you pass the laws and resolutions that impact the city. And you also have got significant financial duties, including approving the budget and any amendments and actually setting the tax levy. So that's presented to you by the assessor and the clerk every year, but you're ultimately responsible for approving the roll and setting the levy. The mayor serves as the executive branch of the city, so they ensure that ordinances are enforced, they ensure that employees are discharging their duties, they preside over council meetings, and then they have those other duties that we've already discussed. I put the municipal judge on here just because I didn't want Judge Hebel to feel left out. Obviously, he serves as the judicial branch for the city and presides over ordinance violations. The judge does have the independent ability to appoint their clerk, so that is a city employee who is directly appointed by the judge, no confirmation from any other body. And then we have a city administrator who serves as our chief administrative officer and directs and coordinates the administration and operations of governments in accordance with the policy set by council. So I think it's important to note, and we'll talk about this several times, and I have a few examples, that as staff, whether that be an employee at Parks who's responsible for making sure that the FAC opens on time on July 8th or 9th, or it be Aaron sitting here at the table with you, we carry out the policy directed by you. Oftentimes we will come forward to you with a proposal and say, I'd like to do this, I think we should do this, but it's ultimately your job as council to decide whether or not that policy should be adopted and whether or not that should be the goal of the city. So I'll talk a little bit later about how the budget is a policy document, which is really where the mayor sets his or her vision for the city by what they're proposing. But it's your authority as council to approve the policy and direction of the city, and it's our job as staff to enact that. So you could do a complete 180 as a community and say, we no longer care about sustainability and diversity. And as staff, we would be obligated to say, okay, those are no longer our community's values. Let's figure out what we're going to do to wrap up that programming. I'm not saying that's a decision that you would make, but if you did, we would say, okay, that's the decision they've made. We're going in a different direction. So when you look at what the duties are under state statute, again, the mayor serves as the CEO of the city, presides over council. The statutes basically and our ordinance say they monitor the activities of the administrator. That's a little goofy, but they're the administrator's day-to-day supervisor. So obviously the administrator and several other key members of leadership are accountable to the mayor and council. And the mayor is sort of responsible for that day-to-day supervision of the administrator because while they are a part-time role, they are closer to a full-time equivalent than any of you as individual elders are. They ensure that we're enforcing our ordinances and laws, serve as a policy leader for our community, and again have presiding powers and tie and veto powers over council. And then as council, you still have the same statutory duties that you would have regardless of whether or not we had an administrator. You're still the legislative branch with all of those powers. So you have the management and control of city property, finances, highways, and public services, the powers to act for the government and good order of the city. That talks explicitly about how your duties should be liberally construed to promote the public health, safety, and welfare and general good government of our community. You've got the power to issue licenses, to regulate businesses, to borrow money. You've got the power to suppress activity or prohibit activity. You have the ultimate power to levy taxes. The mayor proposes a budget and a levy, but as council, that's your power to ultimately do that levy and make that budget approval. And then you also appropriate funds to various items throughout the city. You've got very broad powers. They're really limited only by express language. So unless a duty is specifically delegated either to the mayor, the judge, or an employee, such as the administrator or the police chief through code or statute, you have the power. So when we look at the other duties of elected officials as set forth in our ordinances or our municipal code, the mayor is responsible for presenting a balanced budget annually, outlining the mayor's vision for the future. So when we do the budget, which we're about to head into budget season, the mayor is responsible for reviewing all of the requests from city staff, which are collated by the administrator and finance director and presented to the mayor. But the mayor is ultimately the first person who kind of takes a look and says yes to this initiative, no to that initiative. I need you to come back and bring me a proposal on this project that I'd like to see done. The mayor can also request creation of committees. So for example, the Ad Hoc Communications Committee was requested to be created by the mayor. The mayor makes appointments to boards, commissions, and committees, many of which are approved by you as council, the legislative body. And under our ordinance, the mayor also serves as the official salesperson for the city. So if we're looking to attract a business, the mayor's role there is to kind of say, yes, you should come to Sun Prairie. Let me coordinate with the administrator and with economic development to help you see why Sun Prairie is the best place for you to be. As council, the mayor presents his or her executive budget to you. You are ultimately responsible for approving that budget, which you are free to amend as you see fit, subject to levy limits and other state constraints. and you're responsible for levying the taxes. And again, you have duties that are not otherwise vested elsewhere by law. So really, the mayor kind of initially sets forth the vision through the city. A budget is a policy document because when we budget, we're saying, here's what we value as a community. So when the mayor develops that, they're presenting items to you that they say, this is what I value as mayor. This is the direction that I think the voters elected me to go in. Here's what I'd like to see you do. And then you as council review that and say, yes, we agree with you. We're going to fund this. I don't agree with you. We're not going to fund this. Or I'm sorry, I do agree with you, but we have limited funds and I have other higher priorities as a legislative body that will fund instead. Our ordinance has very explicit duties set forth for the city administrator. So the administrator role is responsible for day-to-day operations and services, supervision of departments, ensuring that any policies or laws enacted by the council are implemented. So the mayor is responsible for making sure we enforce those, but the administrator is responsible for making sure they are implemented. To recommend candidates for appointment to certain offices that need to be confirmed by council. To promote the economic well-being of the city, so kind of to partner with the mayor as the chief salesperson to go out and promote, here's why Sun Prairie is wonderful, here's why your business should locate here, here's why we should have a development come here. The administrator also serves as the city's chief personnel officer to the extent that any staff who are not under council's control or purview for appointment are direct reports or indirect reports to the administrator. And that also means that the administrator is responsible for developing and presenting personnel policies and also serving as the negotiator for the city on the management bargaining team, although that duty can be delegated and is currently delegated to me. The administrator is responsible for directing and coordinating the preparation of the annual budget for the mayor. Again, it is the mayor's executive budget, so obviously the mayor is a part-time role. We have professional full-time staff with finance training and public administration training. So the mayor says to staff, hey, here's what I'd like to see, here's what I want you to present, gives direction to the administrator and our finance team as to how they'd like the budget to be prepared. That's then presented and prepared by staff to the mayor, who can change any recommendations they want. The only constraint is that we need to stay within levy limits. And we obviously can't spend funds on things we're prohibited from purchasing under the law, but otherwise it's truly the mayor's budget. Staff make our recommendations based on our professional expertise and training. The administrator collates that and discusses it with the mayor, but it's the mayor's budget that is ultimately presented to you as council. And then the administrator is also responsible for overseeing our purchasing policies. We have a whole bunch of employee statutory offices. So these are the offices in general that under state law you are responsible for directly appointing. So that includes treasurer, clerk, comptroller, attorney, chief of police, constable, engineer, assessor, street commissioner, and fire chief. The positions that have asterisks by them are positions that can be combined with other duties or eliminated. So for example, a city of our size is not generally going to have a constable. They're going to have a full functioning police department. And thus we don't have the position of constable. Also, oftentimes the position of engineer is combined with like director of public services. So it's not directly vested as a sole role. It is right now, but in the past it was the director of public services. We also can have the comptroller be vested within the finance department, either with the finance director or another employee. And the street commissioner is generally rolled into the role of the director of public works here. So I wanted to give you some concrete examples because we talk a lot about how the mayor kind of sets the vision, you as council set the policy, and then we as staff are responsible for enacting it. But that's kind of vague. So I tried to pick non-controversial examples based on public health, safety, and welfare, and you'll be hopefully delighted to know I'm no longer talking about the water slide at City Hall. I truly tried to pick items that I thought would be very straightforward, that most residents would agree are a core function of local government. So again, when we look at policy versus operations, the mayor's responsible for kind of developing the overall vision. So that could be something like saying, like, I want our parks to be maintained. We should have clean, nice parks and robust recreation programming. You as council will establish those policies. So you'll adopt that through the mayor's budget because, again, the budget is a true policy document. It's how we decide what we're doing throughout the year. And then you can also adopt any other policies to help support that. The administrator is responsible for daily operations and carrying out the vision and policies that are set forth by you as elected officials. And then staff leadership and their teams are responsible for executing those operations. So one of the examples I picked was the budget. The budget is one of the biggest undertakings we do as a city every year. Obviously, the taxes that our residents pay are based on the items that we have in our budget. So the mayor presents that budget to all of you and reviews the recommendations of staff. You as council have the ultimate authority to adopt that budget, and again, you can amend it. So the mayor could say, I'd like to add 17 new firefighters next year. The SAFER grant isn't enough, I want more. You as council could review it and say, you know what, I'm so sorry, Mr. Mayor, our fire department's wonderful and they do great work, but we can't add 17 firefighters without eliminating the entire second floor of City Hall. So we can't approve that. We're going to make an amendment to only add 3. You're responsible for approving the warrants, so all of the city expenditures are approved by you at every council meeting. You authorize borrowing, and then you review and authorize amendments to the budget as presented by staff. At the staff level, each department is responsible for preparing their draft budget for review by the administrator and approval by the mayor. Staff are responsible for presenting budget initiatives. So if I wanted to add staff in my department, I would develop that initiative and submit it to the administrator, who would then work with the mayor to determine whether or not that should be included in the mayor's proposed budget. And then if they don't include the position and I want the position, which has happened before, I could then come to you as council and make my case and say, no, I would very much like this position. Here's why I think you should fund it. And you ultimately get to decide whether or not that position is there. And then staff are also responsible for managing our department budget throughout the year. So once you approve it, we are responsible for ensuring that we remain within it. Or if we need additional funds, come to you to seek a budget amendment with a source for why we need to do something additional. The administrator assists the mayor with the preparation of the mayor's executive budget, directs the departments on budget preparation to ensure that we keep that timeline rolling. As you know, we have to have our budget approved by a certain date in order to get our tax bills out into the world in a timely fashion. And then ensures that our daily operations are consistent and compliant with the budget. So I broke this down into some more granular examples as well, because the budget is a big, unwieldy document and concept. So traffic regulation. Our goal as a city is to promote the public health, safety, and welfare of our residents. One of the ways we do that is by regulating traffic in the city, whether that be through street design or setting speed limits or employing police officers who make traffic stops. So I'm going to kind of take this from the bottom up level. At the staff level, we are responsible for enforcing whatever laws you enact. So if you adopt a Vision Zero policy, which you did, engineering will ensure that our streets are designed in accordance with that Vision Zero policy to promote pedestrian safety and hopefully reduce traffic fatalities, including pedestrian fatalities in our community. Planning will ensure that all developments meet those policies. So if Viridian comes in and says, I'd like to build Smith's Crossing Part 57, they would make sure that all of the streets designed by Viridian were in compliance with what council had set forth in the Vision Zero policy. The police department obviously is kind of the most straightforward one here. They're responsible for enforcing the law. So if you as council say the speed limit on Bird Street is now 10 miles per hour, it will be the police department's responsibility to enforce that speed limit and uphold it. And then to the extent that the police department issues citations to do so, my office is responsible for prosecuting those. So the role of the administrator here is really to direct our day-to-day operations to ensure that the funding remains present for those, provide guidance and direction to department heads. So if you say the speed limit on Bird Street needs to be 10 miles per hour, that's your legislative discretion as the city. It's the administrator's job to work with engineering to make sure that the signs get out there so it's not posted at 10 miles per hour, to make sure the police chief has taken the steps to educate their staff to ensure that they know it's 10 miles per hour and they now need to be pulling people over if they're going 25. And then ensuring that staff are adequately prepared to address this with any developments that come in. So when we review this at the staff technical review committee, the administrator would say, hey, we're doing this road design. This doesn't look like it's in compliance with what council has proposed. The mayor is responsible for recommending appropriate funding to enforce these policies. So it's wonderful to have all sorts of traffic design laws and speed limits, but without appropriate funding, we can't enforce them. And we have to go on a win and a prayer and hope that our nice developers and residents will comply just for the sake of complying. Obviously, that doesn't work, which is why the mayor ensures that we've got adequate funding, and the mayor is also responsible for making sure those are enforced. You as council set that policy. So you ultimately say, we want to be a Vision Zero community. We're upset by the number of pedestrian fatalities in our community, which is what you said with that Vision Zero policy. So we're going to establish speed limits and other policy directives to ensure that we can hopefully reduce these by slowing down traffic. You then also approve the budget for all of the staff who are responsible for carrying this out. So the mayor will present a budget saying, I need X police officers. You'll say, nope, I think we need more or less in order to accomplish these tasks. Another example I provided was street construction and maintenance. So it is our duty to build, maintain, and repair roads. That can include filling potholes, doing snow plowing, the actual creation and construction of a street. So you as council authorize the funding for road repair or construction. You approve our capital improvement plan, which addresses what streets will be getting repaired within a certain year. And you adopt formal policies about how we choose to maintain our streets. So for example, a lot of Wisconsin cities have a policy that all arterial streets are concrete streets. Those are more expensive to build, but they also last longer. So the theory is there, you're getting more bang for your buck because it's more expensive up front, but you don't need to replace it as often. That would be a decision that you as council would make. The mayor will recommend to you policies and replacement and construction through their executive budget, and again, ensure that we're enforcing the laws and the policies the council set forth. The administrator is going to direct the day-to-day operations to ensure the streets are maintained. So this goes from making sure that we have a CIP prepared to present to you, addressing which roads are getting repaired, ensuring that all of our developments are being built compliant with what our street construction standards are, making sure that my office drafts those development agreements along with engineering and planning to hold the developer to that. And then also ensuring that as we present the budget, we know that you as council have said we want these roads maintained. So you need to make sure that engineering in your budget, you're budgeting for and preparing for this. At the staff level, engineering will be physically designing those streets. So whether that be a new road or a road that's being repaired or reconstructed, they will be making sure that design is accomplished. Planning will ensure that any streets that are constructed by developers meet our city standards. So whether that be a new business or home coming in, or whether that be a street that we're doing, they're going to make sure that it meets the standards you've set forth as council through policy and law. And then Public Works is responsible for maintaining those streets. So that includes ensuring the streets are built, either through letting a capital improvement project or doing it on our own. Maintaining those streets, so that goes to filling potholes, checking to make sure that our street is lasting as long as it should, doing those pacer ratings where they come in and show you like the quality of the paving. And then also plowing those streets so that when we have inclement weather, people are still able to get where they need to go within the community. This is a much more smaller, broken down, granular example, but swimming lessons at the Family Aquatic Center. So oftentimes we'll hear something said like, council needs to make sure we offer more swimming lessons, or I want more swimming lessons at 3 p.m. And that's very good feedback, and we want you to provide that to us as staff. But when we talk about how swimming lessons occur, again, the mayor is going to recommend funding for lifeguards, funding for the pool, and direction that we should offer these lessons. You as council are going to approve the funding for the lifeguards who need to be at the pool to teach those lessons. You'll approve the policy on scholarships for those who aren't able to afford lessons at the aquatic center, but who we as a community have currently set the policy of we want to have a scholarship program so that if you cannot afford to access PRF programming, you still have access to it through this program. And then you'll approve the fees that are set for the lessons through the annual budget. The administrator will then say, okay, council authorized swimming lessons. They said they wanted to ensure that kids in our community had the ability to learn how to swim, provides direction to PRF leadership on how we can best accomplish that, and make sure that our scholarship program is both funded and operational so that when someone needs to apply for a scholarship, they can come in and do so. And then our PRF staff on Parks, Recreation, and Forestry is going to hire and train those lifeguards with partnership from finance and HR, collect fees and register for lessons. So in order to have kids at swimming lessons, you need to get them signed up. They'll put out the booklet every year or the flip book that's online and ensure that the lessons are being offered and people are signing up for them. And then making sure that that pool is maintained. So when we have our youth within the community swimming in the pool, it's done with state standards and it's safe and they're not going to be exposed to harmful bacteria. So there, if someone comes to you as an elected official and says, I want swimming lessons at 3 p.m. because that's the best time for me, that's when summer school is over and it's an ideal time for my family, you can say, okay, I'll definitely submit that feedback. And then another elder is probably going to say, I've heard a lot of feedback that we need more lessons in the evening for families where both parents work or both caregivers work. And so then you will provide that guidance to staff, but you ultimately decide how much we're going to fund for these swimming lessons. You don't pass the policy that says like, okay, we're going to have swimming lessons and we're going to do level 6 at 3 p.m. and level 5 at 3:30, level 2 at 5:30, etc. You provide the funding for it, and then staff kind of set up, okay, here's when and how these will be operational. So final example, because it's topical, is the SAFER grant application. So Chief Garrison saw the opportunity to write for this grant. He is responsible for preparing that grant in partnership with the HR team and finance and the administrator. If the grant is ultimately authorized to be applied for and then awarded, he would be responsible for going through the hiring process with Human Resources and the Police and Fire Commission and saying, okay, I get to hire 3 firefighters. These are the 3 firefighters I think we should hire on my eligibility list. The PFC would then authorize the hire of those specific employees, and staff would onboard and train the firefighters. As the administrator, Mr. Oppenheimer would be responsible for reviewing that grant application, assisting the mayor with ensuring that the fire department's budget is going to be appropriately allocated to pay these 3 firefighters for the years that we're required to have them, ensures that our budget is consistent with the grant requirements. So if we have a local match or that 4th year requirement, making sure that the budget we prepare and present to the mayor includes that. And then with firefighters, there's always the concern of union contracts. The fire contract will expire during the pendency of the SAFER grant, and we'll have to negotiate a new one. So providing guidance to staff as they negotiate that contract or directly negotiating that himself. The mayor is responsible for ensuring that our local match funding is included in their executive budget, as well as recommending overall staffing levels for the fire department. And you as council would obviously authorize the application for the grant, as you did tonight, approve the budget consistent with our grant requirements, and then you would approve the fire collective bargaining agreement, which is negotiated at your direction. So when that comes up again, we don't just throw a dart at the wall of staff and say, what do we think council wants? We have that closed session meeting where we say, okay, this contract is up. Here's our staff recommendation for wages. Here's what our comparable communities are doing. Council, what is your direction? And you authorize me to negotiate up to X% increase. We then go forth and do that. So just kind of as one more quick review, it's ultimately the mayor's job to sort of set the vision for the city through their budget. A budget is a policy document. A budget is saying, here's what we're valuing and prioritizing this year as a community. The tricky thing about levy limits is we have to say no to some things, whereas previously we haven't had to. So once you hit levy limits and the mayor's preparing that, the mayor is going to have the difficult decision of saying, we cannot fund all of the things that we have funded before. A reduction needs to be made somewhere. You as council will then review that budget document, and through the amendments that you make and the budget you ultimately approve, we'll develop the policy and goals of the city through the next year. The administrator will then be responsible once that budget is adopted for directing our daily operations and ensuring we're in compliance with the budget and we're working towards those goals and policies that you as elected officials have set. And then staff will determine how do we day-to-day operationalize and execute that vision and policy. So if your policy is we want every child in Sun Prairie to have access to swimming lessons, and you approve a budget that has that, the administrator would then be responsible for saying, okay, we need to make this work. So finance, is this enough money? Parks, what is your plan to authorize this? Do we need to work with the school districts to lease pool space so we have more time to offer lessons? And then staff will be making those recommendations concurrently to the administrator saying, okay, last year we had to turn 12 families away that wanted to register and couldn't. Therefore, we need to increase more lessons at levels 3 and 4. So that's kind of a very granular example, but I think it kind of helps as you're sitting forth and you're talking with constituents to lay out, here's what everyone's role in the system is. So that concludes my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions, or I am happy to cede the floor back to Council President Owens.
Alder Dringler.
Yeah, you gave me some ideas for a referral for swimming lessons for everyone. But I want to address an apparent contradiction that I see with this structure, because we as council, we appoint for employee statutory offices. At a previous council meeting, when we appointed for treasurer, Alder Roses had asked a question about the qualifications, about the candidate that was put forward for appointment, and the reply from staff was, we're not going to talk about this person's qualifications. So how can we make appointments without knowing the qualifications of the candidates being put forward?
Sure. I think that's a really valid question. So I know, for example, I'm going to talk about my own hiring because that was the one I've been the most involved with in terms of what goes forward to council. So I did a screening interview with the city administrator, a couple other staff, and then a couple other outside subject matter experts on local government law. And then I came in and went through a very brutal assessment center designed by our HR department, which was a full day of interviews and interaction and role-playing activities with people. After that, Aaron made the recommendation to offer me the position and take the position to council. And at that time, he sent all of you, I recognize that only a few of you were on this body at that time, email saying, okay, here's this individual's qualifications. I'm recommending their appointment. Here's why I believe they're uniquely qualified. She's available if you'd like to reach out to her. Otherwise, I'll be recommending appointment of this position at this upcoming council meeting. And then you as council vote to approve that. So I think the struggle is we don't like to necessarily talk about the qualifications of any individual employee. For example, I hired a new paralegal because mine just retired after 25 years of service to the city. That's not a position that's approved by council. So you funded me to have a paralegal. Mine retired, therefore I had a vacancy. I hired a new one. I made that hiring decision in conjunction with our HR team. But for a position that you approve, I think you do have the ability to say, hey, we'd like to know more about this. I think the inherent struggle there is for staff who are used to hiring positions that aren't subject to council appointment. They're like, well, this is our hire ultimately. What is this questioning? So I think it would have been fair for you to say, or for us as staff to come forward and say, okay, we're appointing this employee as treasurer. We'd like you to appoint them, and here's why we believe they're qualified to do so. But for example, I know our city clerk is hoping to make a hire in her office due to a vacancy. That position is at her sole discretion. However, if Elena chose to resign and we needed to appoint a new city clerk, which I sincerely hope she does not do, that would come forward to you and you would be able to evaluate their qualifications and say, okay, I think staff are presenting the right person and here's why. that said you are confirming the appointment or rejecting the appointment. So it's not a situation where you as council are necessarily conducting the full interview process or screening the resumes of all 75 candidates who would apply. But you're saying, okay, Kathleen and the city administrator have come forward with this recommendation for clerk. We're going to review it. Yes, we agree with your assessment, or no, we don't. So I know Mr. Oppenheimer experienced that the previous time he was hiring a city attorney. He had 3 candidates that were finalists. He brought forward his preferred choice, and council said, no, thank you very much to that candidate. So he then went forward and hired the next candidate on the list who council would approve. So you do have the ability to see that. That ideally would have been handled slightly differently on the floor, but I think the staff who were presenting it that evening were I don't want to say unfamiliar with, because I know they understand it, but they're used to making hiring decisions on their own. And this was the first time they were presenting a position that was subject to your confirmation. So I think it would be fair to say, you know, what makes this employee qualified to be treasurer? Oh, they have a bachelor's degree in accounting. They've been working in our finance department for 7 years. But what we wouldn't want to get into an open session on the floor is like, well, what was their last performance review? Were they in meets or were they in exceeds? How is their attendance at work? Like, do they have a positive attitude when they're interacting with someone? So you would be evaluating their qualifications and making that appointment, but you wouldn't necessarily be responsible for the selection of them as finalists, if that makes sense. That was a really good question, Alder Drangler.
Yeah, thank you. That helps clear that up. So perhaps in the future, for when we have when we need to appoint an employee for a statutory office, we can maybe just get a few bullet points why they're being put forward.
Yep, and I know that has been the city administrator's standard practice when he's made that presentation. So I'm fairly confident, based on his head nodding and writing of notes, that that will occur going forward.
Awesome, thank you.
Alder Baker.
Thank you, Chair. A question about that situation. When is it that we should utilize the Personnel Committee? Or shouldn't the treasurer gone through the Personnel Committee with a recommendation?
So the way our structure is set up, the Personnel Committee has some role in hiring of certain positions. That is not one of them. So that would normally be a situation where, let's say you wanted to have a closed session discussion just to be like, hey, I have no idea who this employee is. Our finance staff seems wonderful, but my interaction with them is generally limited to budget and warrants. I'd like to know more about this person. You could request that we have a closed session discussion at the Committee of the Whole. I'm just going to pull up our ordinance real quick on the exact duties of the Personnel Committee, because I don't want to make a misstatement to you. So give me 1 second. I have it open in one of these tabs. But normally that wouldn't go through the Personnel Committee.
Yeah, while you're looking at that, I would want to add on the treasurer position itself, there was no other option. So that wasn't like, well, we had 3 to choose from, or there was 2 to choose from, which is probably why it threw off Sandy, who was presenting, is that there wasn't any other options. It was the only option we had. So
while you're looking that up, maybe it's that I'm misunderstanding what the purpose of the Personnel Committee is.
Sure. I actually just had a great conversation with Alder Comstock about that probably about 2 weeks ago, and her new role is chair. So I've got the ordinance pulled up in front of me now. So we've set the duties of our standing committees under ordinance. So the Personnel Committee is responsible for developing and maintaining a system for gathering input from city employees regarding wages, benefits, and other workplace issues. Periodically evaluating the city's wage rates paid for comparable positions by similar employers, particularly similar employers. County. I say that because that's literally what our ordinance says. Developing and recommending council action regarding personnel policies. So if the city administrator or the human resources director bring forward a policy, for example, on Americans with Disabilities Act reasonable accommodations, personnel would review that and then refer it to council for approval. Developing and recommending council action on workplace safety policies. So as a local government, we're not subject to OSHA, but obviously we still care a lot about workplace safety and protecting our employees. So they would develop those policies, like who needs steel toe boots? What are our, max hours for a snowplow driver? Developing and recommending council action, regarding changes and modifications to the non-unionized pay plan and classification of non-union positions. Developing and recommending action regarding changes to fringe benefit packages. So they're not responsible for directly hiring or interviewing any positions. They're more so responsible for developing, with obviously staff recommendation and consultation, the personnel policies that impact the city. So they might, for example, develop work rules for the treasurer. A lot of communities have a rule that everyone in the finance department has to take 1 consecutive week off throughout the year to ensure that if there's any sort of irregularity, that would sort of be noticed during that time. So I don't know if you're all familiar with what happened in Dixon, Illinois a few years ago. An employee embezzled millions of dollars and developed a very expensive horse hobby. A lot of communities, as a direct reaction to that, said everybody in finance has to take at least one full week off during the year so that if there's something hinky going on, that would then hopefully be noticed and caught by other members of the staff team. So personnel might, for example, review a policy like that and say, council, I think we should adopt this. But they're not directly responsible for selection of personnel under the way our committee is currently set up.
Any other questions? Alder.
Thank you. Kathleen, you just gave a presentation here. Can, in fact, the controller cross-train in terms of the, treasurer? I think that was my understanding, or did I misunderstand you?
Nope, those are one of the offices that can be combined. So customarily, we don't necessarily see controller and treasurer designed together. Give me just a second. I'm going to pull up 6209. And the reason for that is just because of what their duties are. So I'll tell you what each of those are and then explain where they would normally be combined. So the treasurer in general, and I'm very much simplifying their duties here, is responsible for collecting all monies owed to the city, as well as dispersing monies that the city is obligated to disperse and kind of keeping our day-to-day book. So quote unquote, balancing the city's checkbook, as well as making a report to you as council of the monies received and dispersed. And then the comptroller is responsible for evaluating outstanding contracts and our contracts to ensure that we've got the funds to support them. So if we're contracting to buy a new snowplow, they make sure that we actually have the funds in the budget to procure that snowplow. They're responsible for sort of reviewing the treasurer, not their performance necessarily, but ensuring that the receipts and disbursements like reconcile. It's sort of like an internal audit role. And then they also evaluate each claim presented against the city. Those aren't claims like liability claims, but they're claims such as, I just bought some new legal pads from Amazon. So they'd be responsible for evaluating that, making sure that I did so in accordance with our purchasing policy. The comptroller countersigns all of our contracts to support, yes, we do have the available funds to do so. And then they will also make a list of all of our special assessments. So yes, those offices are or the comptroller office is able to be combined. It's not necessarily a sound financial practice to specifically combine it with treasurer, simply because the comptroller is sort of our internal check on the treasurer. So oftentimes you'll see comptroller as a separate role, and then treasurer combined with finance director, or treasurer is combined with clerk, and then the comptroller is a separate office. So yes, it can be combined, but combining it with treasurer is not the ideal way to structure that, just because you lose that statutory internal check that we're supposed to have.
Okay, let's do it this other way. The leadership meetings that you guys have had, have you considered any cross-training due to our, post-referendum that failed?
Sure. I've been in attendance at those meetings. It's not my, unique and independent decision, but I can definitely say we've discussed, are there positions we combine? Are there positions where we could have some overlap and support each other? If there is a vacancy, is this a position that we need to fill, or could we take the duties and split it 4 different ways amongst other departments so everybody bears a little more of the load? I think that's something we definitely talked about as the executive leadership team, particularly with some of the positions where we proposed elimination or significant reduction of staffing. If you as council still choose to have those duties, we have to ensure that they occur somewhere. So if, for example, we were to eliminate the media center, you as council have clearly said that you want us to do a better job of communicating with residents, that you want to ensure that our meetings are broadcast. In fact, we've got set in the council rules that our meetings need to have a hybrid option. So we as staff would be responsible for figuring out how that could occur. That's definitely something we're always thinking about, whether it be a statutory office or whether it be a vacancy in a parks position or a utility line worker position. That's something we regularly look at as staff before we fill a vacancy. And in fact, at this point, all vacancies have to go before the vacancy review committee, which I think right now consists of the city administrator and the human resources director, to ensure that if we're proposing hiring an employee, we're not doing so just for the sake of headcount. We can justify, here's why I need this position and why these duties can't be sent elsewhere.
Keep discussing it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you very much. And truly, if you as council have other items you'd like to see presented on, we kind of have a long list of possible educational topics. But if there's something you'd like, and it doesn't have to be me, so if you want to hear about the budget, that should not be me. That should be somebody from finance. We'd be happy to make sure that occurs for you.
Thank you.
I do have one question.
Okay.
Your presentation, is it available how do we get a copy of it?
Sure. I am going to email a copy to all of you, and then Council President Owens also asked that I print a hard copy for all of you. So I'm going to do so after this meeting, and I will make that available. I will also ask the clerk if they can update the packet after the fact so that it lives in there as well.
Thank you. Report of the council president. Actually, thank you, Alder Bannerman. That leads right into what I was going to report on. My policy is going to be every time we see or are given a complex report like we did just moments ago, I'm asking that that also be made available in hard copy to all of you, because I know for me, I don't go back and look at the electronic version. I just don't. And so that's why you've already received a copy of the council rules and the council ethics policy so that you have those in hard copy. That's just how we'll do business. All right, report of the city administrator.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few quick update items. One is that the District 3 post-referendum town hall is scheduled for tomorrow evening, it's June 17th, from 6 to 8 p.m. in the council chambers. An additional post-referendum town hall is taking place on June 23rd from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. in the community room at the library. Sun Prairie's 2026 Juneteenth celebration is taking place this Friday, June 19th from 4 to 7 p.m. at Wetmore Park. This is a free community event with a free community barbecue, music, and games. The 4th annual Sun Prairie Pride Fest is on Saturday, June 27th from 12 to 4 p.m. at West High School. And then finally, we invite you to join the Family Aquatic Center ribbon cutting ceremony taking place on Wednesday, July 8th from 5 to 5:30 p.m. with a soft opening from 6 to 8 p.m. So that's everything I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. All right, are there any referrals? None? All right. We are ready for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
We adjourned.